Michael, good morning, and thank you for giving me some time today to really get to hear your story about your family and your trajectory becoming a winemaker. So please uh, tell me about your family and how it all started.
Well, great to be here. Good to be talking with you and sharing my story. It's always fun. Um, wow, it goes way back. I was born in '62 on a farm and ranch in southern Colorado. I'm the oldest sibling. I have four. There's four in our family. Four. I have three brothers and sisters, and I am the oldest. So grew up in southern Colorado. My dad was a farmer, rancher. We managed thousands of acres of a lot of barley. Did a lot of stuff for Coors back then. So I pretty much grew up on a tractor and definitely knew how to drive a shovel. So, but you know what? I'm very, very blessed with that upbringing. It's what drives me today, and is probably what's driven me here. So, you know, that very strong work ethic that we all grew up with is, what I have with me today, and I'm very thankful for that. So, anyhow, farming and ranching. As I started ending my high school years, my mother was very adamant to push us kids to higher education. Mm-hmm. And, you grow up on a farm. I wasn't aspiring to be anything, like a doctor or anything like that. But I did love building. I loved creating things. So I enrolled into engineering. And it was architectural engineering that I was really gravitated to, with the dreams of building or help build, skyscrapers or bridges or something like that. And I was doing really well in school. I was lucky to have a good mathematical brain, and I loved drawing and crafting, and was doing great. And on my junior year, a few buddies and a cousin, we just got this crazy idea to head to the coast, go check out the beaches, the California girls, the surf, all that stuff. And off we went. We just blazed to California, and it was a great road trip. But once we got there, and we kind of ended up in Los Angeles, Venice Beach or whatever it may be, it just wasn't our scene. It was a little bit too fast for us country munkins, and we headed north. And we ended up in Napa Valley, and that's kind of where it all starts. As we came across Napa Valley, we were told by our parents, hey, go visit a friend of the family. And we roll into Napa, and we searched for Sequoia Grove Winery. The friend was Jim Allen at the time. Okay. And ironically, my story has involvement with Sequoia Grove since then. So we pull in, a bunch of farm kids pull in, we jump out and, hey, Jim, ta-da, we're here. Kind of overwhelmed him and his wife, but, we knew how to work. And so we jumped out and we helped him work and plant vines and run wires, drive tractors. And that evening, his wife, Barbara, would put together this beautiful spread out in the yard, just like you see on TV, this big, ginormous meal outside. And in those early years of the wine business, Jim was very connected to his neighbors, whether it be cake bread or mandavi or whatever. And, here we are breaking bread and enjoying family and camaraderie and time, great food. Now, I did not grow up with a wine culture at all. I was beer and bourbon where I grew up. So this was the very, very first time wine was introduced to me. Did I like it? Honestly, I didn't even understand it. But what I was gravitated to was the artistic energy that everybody had about wine, the story behind it, the farming, everything. And that's where I kind of got bitten by the bug. And it's right at that point that wine became part of my life.
Wow. So were you there working for them for a long time? Then what happened?
Well, we hung out for about 4 or 5 days, repetitively, helping him work. And that evening he would feed us like kings. And he couldn't employ me. Jim at the time could not employ me because he had his kids and he was busy upstarting. And I just said, what happens if I stay? So first thing I have to do is call mom. And wow, that went over like a lead balloon. She was somewhat disappointed that I said, "Hey mom, it's only going to be a semester off. It's only going to be a semester off. I'll be back." And, lo and behold, here I am 38 years later, still taking that semester off. She's okay with it now. But now I had to make some hay to make ends meet. So I actually found a job through the help of Jim Allen and his brother Steve, developing vineyard. And ironically, it's a vineyard today known as Domaine Carneros. And because of my work ethic and because of the little bit of engineering that I had under my belt, I was very good at surveying and engineering things like irrigation and so on and so forth. So I quickly went up the ladder to a very high profile management role developing vineyard. That was awesome. Money was good, life was good, no responsibilities. My overhead of life was basically nothing. I mean, it was a fun time. But then to keep adding to my wine story, these vineyards that we developed down in Carneros, you were now mingling with great winemakers coming to buy these grapes, and from all over Napa Valley. And a key person in my life is a gentleman named Andrei Chelichev. At the time, he was a consulting winemaker for many people, including Sequoia Grove. And he took me under his wing and taught me a lot about vineyards, taught me a lot about wine. Meantime, I'm tasting more and more wine just on an everyday basis. And I was then realized and told that, hey, if you want to learn more about wine, you have to learn the science of it. And so I enrolled myself in the UC Davis extension program and went to school where I could. It was kind of a night school, a day here, a day there, through their extension program. And after 3 years, I did get my certificate as a winemaker from UC Davis. So along all of that time, I was doing my homework with some of the greatest winemakers of the world. It was absolutely fantastic. It was a fun run. So that there is a whole nother chapter to my life once I got out of school.
Wow. Well, that is such a great trajectory, right? You have such a great background of being out in the farm, being a good hand to your dad, to your family, learning everything you could. Then obviously your creativity of learning how to moving forward to do something else. You're just like, hey, I love what I did with my family, but now let me go find myself in another avenues, right? Which you did, and then you applied your math, your science, your art for your love for engineering, and there you go. You're in a great spot in Napa of all places, right? Did you ever think you were going to end up in Napa anywhere?
Even today, I look back and say, how in the heck did I end up here? But I have to give so much credit to the late Jim Allen. I mean, he gave me so much opportunity, connected me with so many people. I mean, it's endless how influential he was in my life and my career. And again, like I said, Sequoia Grove will become full circle in my story. So when I got out of school and I was really feeling my oats, I wanted to make my own wine. I wanted to have a wine that I crafted. And I had two problems. A, I didn't have a facility, and B, coming out of college, you're not rolling in dough to go start a wine label. I did do a presentation to drum up some capital, and I found one gentleman that was willing to take some risk with me, a gentleman named Brian Henry. He was the local OB/GYN doctor here in St. Helena. And with his help and funding, I launched my first brand, and that was a brand called Carl Lawrence. Now, Carl is my middle name, and Lawrence was Brian's middle name. So it's taken us two partners in creating a label. Now, I had a vision then to take Valley Floor Fruit Cabernet and blend it with mountain fruit. There wasn't too much of that going on in the early 90s. And I took some fruit from Rutherford and some fruit off of Hell Mountain, and I created this first wine, and it was a sensation and a hit and just rocketed to stardom. So Carl Lawrence had a good 20-year run.
Wow.
It became known as the cult wine without the cult price. And I was running in the leagues of, all the top culty wines, but I was under the radar. I kind of purposely did that because I had my day jobs and other things that I had to focus on that I couldn't steal a whole lot of limelight. For some reason, I was a little bit more humble and I kept, my accolades kind of at bay. But the label was ultra successful. I mean, it got to a point where I could release the 1st of June and I'd be completely finished by June 3rd.
Wow.
It was that sought after. Now, what happened to Carl Lawrence? Well, along the way, I brought on more equity partners, and the boat everybody just wasn't getting along there at the end, and I decided just to break away and go out on my own. And so in 2000, with the 2011 vintage, is when I launched the Trujillo brand and the Madeline brand, and I am sole owner, sole winemaker, and I wear every hat from the janitor to the maid to the mechanic to the salesperson. So I love it, and I'm happy to have my own solo brand.
So I see 2 labels, right? Your Madeline and then your Trujillo brand. So what's the difference?
Okay, so the Trujillo brand it's my almost 40 years, 4 decades of winemaking, just coming into what I truly believe is great Cabernet. And just like I used to do with Carl Lawrence, it's a flagship. It's the steering wine to my company, Napa Valley Cabernet at its best. Now that I have a tasting room and I'm making wine and I go out on the road to do winemaker dinners, it's a little difficult to just do it with Cabernet Sauvignon. So to have some diversity, I brought myself thinking hey, give me a white wine, a rosé. Let me have some fun wines to entice my wine club, to entice, winemaker dinners, so on and so forth. So a couple of years after I launched Trujillo, I launched the Madeline line. And Madeline is named after my daughter. So my daughter's name is Sophia Madeline Trujillo. For obvious reasons, I can't use Sophia. So I chose to use Madeline. And this label is taken off on me. Holy moly. What used to be winery only is just now starting to go into the wholesale market. And it's surprisingly wonderful to see the reception for the Madeline wines.
That is so great to see that your endeavors have paid off, but they didn't come easy, right? You did go through your challenges, and when it comes to those challenges, did you have any specific challenge faced as a Latino winemaker in Napa?
Not necessarily. There was a lot of us Latinos that were, first generations that in the early 90s, there was a lot of Latinos going off to make their own wines. They grew up in the fields, or their parents grew up in the fields. They understood, what makes great grapes, how to grow great grapes. So I was at the cutting edge of all of that. I was, proud to be one of the first Latinos to come out with a wine back in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. Challenges, I personally never really thought of any challenges. I never even, I don't put anything in front of me that was an obstacle. It's just hard work, just persistence and hard work, and if the product is in the bottle, it doesn't matter. So.
Right. So is your wine mostly a direct to consumer, or are you also like doing wholesale or actually also selling in a retail space?
A little bit of all venues. So I'm a small producer. Collectively, with all of the labels that I'm making, I'm about 1,500 cases. Okay. Am I anxious to grow and expand crazily? No, not really. I learned from my days of running, my own brand, Carl Lawrence, and consulting for other brands. I used to make the Herb Lamb wines. One thing I didn't mention in my story is I actually became the CEO and head winemaker for Sequoia Grove in 2002. So that sort of became my day job. And even through running and operating a big winery like that and operating a small winery like what I had, you learn a lot about how to get into the market. I mean, I had the great opportunity of learning, big winery, small winery situations. So where am I today? I am a believer, and I love the direct consumer channel, and I definitely am going to strive to have that be the majority of my business. But I'm also a very strong believer in, the support and the energy and the what comes to you from wholesale. Now we have on-premise, the restaurants where you're drinking it at the restaurant. We have off-premise. I believe in both channels. I love the on-premise because you're going to have the sommeliers sitting there hand selling your wine, telling the story to somebody who's never heard of you, and that only propagates your brand. It only propagates, and if they love the wine, it's just the snowball effect.
Right.
The wholesale side or the off-premise side is important to me too, and as many brands may shed no interest for that, I do, but I want to find the right off-premise folks, people that get behind me. They don't discount my price, they don't undermine my efforts. So the answer to your question is majority of my business is direct, but I do support wholesale and on and off premise.
Very nice. Are you only California based, or are you shipping nationwide?
So the wine club, we can ship pretty much everywhere. We are registered with all the allowable shipping states. There are still a handful that you can't ship to, but the customer is pretty savvy. The customers that live in these more restricted states are pretty savvy. They'll ship it to their mom or their uncle or something. So we can pretty much get wine everywhere. And then as far as the wholesale distribution of my company, I'm so small that I only have about 5 states that I'm working with.
That's awesome. So I want to get to taste your wines. The aromatics here in front of me are amazing. So which ones do you want to start off with?
I recommend starting off with the white cuvee.
Okay.
This is a wine that's very, very unique in blending. Okay. I've been blending these two varietals together since the inception of Madeleine White. And this is Sauvignon Blanc and Gewürztraminer coming together.
Wow.
Almost 50-50 combination. It varies 5 or 6% per vintage, but it's mainly half Sauv Blanc, half Gewürztraminer. And I ferment them dry, and I source the grapes up in the Mendocino area where it's a much cooler climate, maintain more acidity. This particular white wine is a crowd pleaser. This is one of my fastest growing SKUs right now. It's just perfect for the patio, perfect for the boat, perfect for the beach, the pool. It's just easy drinking, fun white wine. It works so hand in hand. I mean, the Sauvignon Blanc on its own is, it's going to give you that grapefruit, that citrus sort of characters. But then if you throw the Gewürztraminer on top of that, I think it gives it more volume. Yes. The acidity is rounded out, and because the fruitiness and the tropical parts of Gewürztraminer give the wine more volume in the palate and volume in the aromatics. And it's a juicy, fun wine. It's by no means is it cloying or clogging. I mean, you can, like you said, it's crisp, clean, fresh, bright.
Beautiful.
Let me point out the labeling of this Madeleine wine. If you look at it carefully, you'll see that it's the back pocket of a pair of denim jeans. Yes. So if you think about it, when you're wearing your jeans or you go to throw your jeans on and you're heading out the door, I mean, you're going to something that's way more casual.
Right.
And the messaging behind this label is casual wine. Throw on your jeans, throw on, your swimsuit, whatever it may be, and just drink these wines for fun.
Very,
I have
very cool.
I have to give shout out and credit. I work with an amazing label designer, package designer, Madeline Corson. She does all of my design work for all of my packaging. She's pretty amazing. So she helped me come up with all that concept. Rosé is the same concept, same idea. I'm not trying to be the typical or ordinary or Provence style rosé. I want my rosé to stand out a little extra, a little more flavorful. I want it to have good acidity, refreshing. Same thing. If you're sitting next to your pool or sitting on the beach, I just want this to be a nice, refreshing wine. Both these wines are very low in alcohol, so that you get the fruit vibrancy of the wine, and they're very refreshing and crisp on your palate. This rosé, this vintage is Grenache and Sangiovese coming together.
Okay.
And what's crazy about it is I actually kiss it with just a smidgen of the Sauv Blanc and a smidgen of the Gewurz. And I think my thinking behind that as a winemaker is the Sauv Blanc is going to bring in a little bit of a pop to the acidity, a different kind of pop and more citrus type thing. And then the Gewürztraminer actually, I think, really adds to the aromatics. Gives you that strawberry shortcake kind of concept.
You do. You do pick that up. Beautiful. I love the tannins on this as well. It's beautiful color. I love the fact that it's low on alcohol. It doesn't have that alcohol nose whatsoever. It's interesting how you blended this as well. And because normally people don't do that. Like I think it's either 2 blends max on when to do the rosés and that's it. But you really are changing things up to really create that differentiator in your wines, right?
No, and I do that on purpose. I want these wines to be consistent year after year, and so if I need to, my composition may change year to year. But the most important part is to deliver a consistent product. The way this wine comes forth and the way it delivers to your palate, it is beautifully paired with foods that have a little glow to them, a little spice. Curry or Cajun spice or, Asian food that carries a little bit of spice. It really holds up really well to that. Yeah. It brings up a funny story on my end. So being from New Mexico, Colorado, I have to have my hatched New Mexico chili every year, right?
Okay.
So I have it FedEx to me overnight, and the day I receive it, I roast it on the grill and get it all prepared and get it ready to freeze and put away. And in that process, there's many bottles of rosé that go down.
Congratulations on this.
Yeah, and then the Madeleine has one more. I do a Madeleine red blend too. Okay. The red blend is very, very popular, and it's kind of limited on how much I can make because it's made from the same grapes that make the high-end Cabernet. So it's whatever doesn't make the cut, I reblend, push in more Cab Franc, more Merlot, drive the Cabernet percentage downward into the 50% range. And that's just a sort of a really easy drinking, sexy, red, silky wine. It's very, very popular for me, and it's gobbled up very quickly. So if you ever get an opportunity, there is a Madeleine red cuvee as well.
Awesome. Who is mostly your market share that you're selling to? Is it millennials or more non-millennials? What's your market share?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, we all went through the baby boomer era, the cult wine series, and those guys have full cellars. They're busy drinking all the stuff that they collected. So yeah, we're working hard on the younger generation of wine drinkers, and it's exciting to see, these young people just gravitating to great wine. Whether it's a nice, simple red wine like maybe the Madeleines, I have people that are buying my reserves and just loving them. So it's pretty fun.
So tell me, what do you want to start off from your reds?
I'd go with the white label, the Trujillo next, the Trujillo Cab.
Okay.
Yes. This is, I've been making wine for 38 years. I've made wine from almost every square mile of Napa Valley. In the days when I owned Carl Lawrence and made those wines, as I told you earlier, I love the combination of Rutherford and Hell Mountain. So that's what this blend brings forth, is Rutherford and Hell Mountain. But I also have a third vineyard in St. Helena that plays a part in this, and each AVA has its own personality, and it brings it very special attributes to the final blend. Rutherford is going to be that sort of dusty cherry currant, very sort of rich with that. Mountain's going to give you a little bit more spicier black fruit notes, and then my St. Helena vineyard is like the velvet glove. It's like cocoa and mocha. Now you blend all those together in harmony, and that's what you get, is what's in your glass. And my style of wine is not over the top. I want it to be elegant, complex, big in expression, but a very, very elegant, refrained expression. And it's my style. It's more of a polished style Cabernet, and I love it. And my audience really appreciates it and loves it too. So it is a Bordeaux blend. It runs about 78% Cabernet Sauvignon from the 3 vineyards that I mentioned. And I do source some fantastic Merlot, Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec that just helps me bring this wine into harmony.
Wow. It's so silky on your palate. It's just so nice. Wow, this is really good.
And without a doubt, and through my track record of the way I make wines, that balance today, it just will give you 10, 15 years of aging gracefully in your cellar. I mean, I can go back and drink wines that I made 15, 20 years ago of this same style, and they're still holding up beautifully in the wine cellar.
I love that velvetyness that you get in your palate. This is just really, really impeccable wine.
And it's a seamless wine. It doesn't poke out at you. It doesn't get sticky. The tannins they're sweet. They're not dry. The flow all the way to the big lingering finish is there. I'm very proud of these wines. They're me.
And it's your almost 40 years of winemaking experience, and obviously your other brand that was very successful, taking all those great attributes, it looks like in all your years of history and applying it here. I feel like that's what I'm tasting here, right? It's just
that's exactly what it is. Yeah, the story behind my brand is good. So speaking of story, let me point out the label on this packaging for you, because it's very special as well.
Okay.
I know the camera can't see it, but maybe if you get an opportunity. But all of our conversation has been, about my Latin heritage, how I came into the business, how I grew up in Colorado, farm kid. Everything on that label is my entire story that I've told you today. So I'm going to dissect that label for you to understand. So First time ever, Trujillo, my surname, and only my name is on the bottle. I've been in collaboration, Carl Lawrence with a collaboration. I used to own a label called Cadium, a collaboration. I've consulted for other people. I've worked for Sequoia Grove. I've made wine for many, many, many people. But this is the first bottle that is just me. And at first it was a little weird, but now I'm very, very proud of it. So Trujillo is a very important part of the label. Being Spanish and having the Trujillo name being Latin and Spanish, I wanted to have the packaging look like a Spanish wine. So, if you look at Spanish bottles, they cover the bottle with a lot of paper, and, they're big sort of bold labels. They many times have the family crest brought over, but I didn't want to be as simple as just cut and paste the Trujillo family crest, because nobody would really understand it. Where I took elements of my crest, which is the shield in the middle, which is part of my crest. But the animals on the side, the Colorado ram represents Colorado, and the bear represents California. So I kind of created my own crest. Within the ribbon, there's a word called fortaleza, fortitude, strength. And in my early years of my career, as you were asking, it's a tough go to get up going business-wise. And I had to deal with some health issues with my late wife. And when you're a young man going through some of the trials and tribulations that God hands you, it changes you as a person. And Karen, my late wife, she was very instrumental in me getting into the wine business. And there at the bottom, you see a little blue flower.
Yes.
It represents a Colorado columbine, which was Karen's favorite flower. Now, and that's in tribute to her. And if you look at the label carefully, you'll see that it has a wood grain texture to it.
Yes.
And when I'm not squashing grapes, I'm not in my wood shop making something of fine furniture or something for the house or something like that. I love woodworking. It's my passion. And then up on the top left, you see the little notches?
Yep, right here.
Each notch represents a decade of winemaking, soon to be 4.
Wow.
So that's the whole story of the label.
I love all the detail you did for this. I mean, it really becomes an experience, and especially a wine like this, how long can you age it for?
My wines will give you 15 years easy.
Wow.
On exceptional vintages, if you have, Mother Nature gives us some of these stellar vintages. I have wines in my cellar that are 20 years old and still drinking great. I opened a half bottle of 2004 Carl Lawrence last week, a half bottle. In a million years that I think that wine was still going to be vibrant. I mean, I just said, let's open it and see what it's like. Holy cow, it was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect.
They age well. I love that.
Gracefully well.
Gracefully well. That's the key word. So how important was having a mentor in your life?
I absolutely super important. And I was very fortunate to have many. Right when I came to California, Jim Allen, his brother Steve Allen was the vineyard side of the operations. Andre Chelichev, Tony Soder, Jacques Lardy. I mean, I could just name winemakers from all around the world that have influenced what I do today.
That's so great. I think that's it's a big key, right? I think sometimes it's so hard to approach people to help you. And I think that's when I listen to these stories, that's always one key component. They were not afraid and they went to go ask for help. And I think, as Latinos, we're proud. We're like, it's just by default, it's in our genes. We're just like, let me do it myself. Let me go figure it out. Let me get those bumps and bruises. But as we evolve, and we see why, I'm like, why is that winemaker so successful? What makes them so different? And then when we sit down and talk to a person like yourself, you're like, what was your key? And you're like, this is my mentorship. But people actually took some time, but you had to be willing to put in the work, right? No one's just going to give up their time, which is very valuable if you're not going to do the work and live up to that passion to do it, right? So
you take a chance. And the big thing is you got to take a chance. Even today I have mentors behind me, on the business level of, I work, one of my clients who I consult for today, who I've worked for now for about 12 years. I mean, on the business level as a mentor, he is amazing. He is amazing. And he owns a winery here in Napa that I'm very proud to be part of, Matera Winery. And, that's a very successful brand, up and coming. And it's just fun to be part of that, and to work with the gentleman that owns it has been a real honor. And this late in my career, to work with that kind of mentorship as a business person is priceless.
Exactly. So let's go finish off with your last bottle. And this is a Merlot.
All right. Well, that is a brand new label for me.
Okay.
As of this last vintage. Now, our direct-to-consumer wine club is getting stronger and stronger, and we're actually starting to run out of wines here and there. But also, too, I want to have fun as a winemaker. I mean, I now that I have all this time on my hands, I can go out and play. I'm making these very special 1 and 2 barrel lots of wine that will go under that red label there, that special label. That's a wine club label only.
Wow.
And out of there, I've already did a Cab Franc, super successful. I did a Malbec, super successful. There's a little bit of the Merlot left. I mean, we're down to about the last 8 cases. And that's a label that's going to just be little one-offs, a barrel here, a barrel there, or something kind of fun for me. I have a
That's awesome.
Syrah on deck. I have another Cab Franc on deck. I love to play with some crazy Rhone varietals, maybe. So that label there is just me having some fun. I think I made about 48 cases of it. And for people that don't be shy for this Merlot. This is a big, bold Merlot.
So what should I be picking up on the aromatics?
It's actually quite spicy. It's almost like a black raspberry kind of note that you get, more of a black raspberry. It's a little bit. I like to call it a little bit rambly in a good way. It's very dense for a Merlot. It's quite dense for a Merlot. It's by no means is it lush and weak. It does have some horsepower to it. This is just a fun wine. Easily will age in your cellar, for a decade and only get better and better. Some of the greatest wines of the world are Merlot based. So.
Right. No, I picked up those hint of spiciness. Those notes really do stand out. But the blackberry, this is great. I love the deep color. It's just beautiful.
Well, that is a mountain grown Merlot. So it does come off a Howe Mountain. So it is quite intense.
Beautiful tannins on it. And then what's the alcohol in this?
That one's probably running about 14.4.
Okay.
Yeah, and keep in mind that is an 18 vintage that you're drinking. So it's a baby. It's in its adolescence right now.
What's the optimum time to actually drink this wine?
Well, I encourage it. If people want to drink them upon delivery, it's awesome. Just give it a little decanting. A wine like that can use a couple hours in the decanting. Same with the 2017 Trujillo Cab. If you have a cellar, I like to ask people to give it at least 3 years because that lets everything sort of come together and mesh together into harmony. But in between now and then, there's nothing wrong with decanting a wine. It really helps open it up.
I use my V-spin, and I really enjoy that because gives me an hour, 2 hour, 3 hours of decanting in less than 15 minutes, right? So that's really very nice. But if this tastes this good as it is right now, I'm thinking about now I just got to put it away and say I'll see you in 3 years, right? Because it is spectacular wine. For being a Merlot, I would never expect this of a Merlot. So.
We're sold out, but the inaugural Cab Franc and the inaugural Malbec they were good too. They were really good.
Wow. And what's your price point on this?
It lists at 65, but the club members get it, with their normal discounts. So depending on what level of club you're at, you get your big discount on it. But it's listed at 65.
Wow. Worth every penny. I don't even want to share it with anybody. This is like one of those things that you're just going to have over here. You go to dinner by yourself just to enjoy this one. Wow.
Yeah. That'll be special in another couple of years. And I could see myself having a bottle of that with like a nice Asabuco or something like that.
Nice Sambuca. You're right. I think they bringing out the meaty flavors of all that with the sauces. This will complement amazing.
And it'll hold up well. It'll hold up to it very well.
That is great. Well, Michael, I really appreciate your time today. I love you sharing your family story and the attention to details that you took to labels. Nowadays, it's such a competitive space as it is, and I think people could resonate a lot with labels now because that's really what we spend our time at. We already know we're going to drink the wine. That's once we buy it, we know that. But before we make decisions, we always, personally, I look at the labels, I look at the details because I know that's very intentional from the winemaker. So if he's very intentional with this, I'm thinking, what am I going to get out of that? What's really inside, right? It's going to be an unbelievable thing. So congratulations on this. I really appreciate all the hard work you've done. These 30 years, you're going to be going on 40. We're going to see that little etch on that as well. That's going to be awesome. And I just want to thank you for sharing your story, especially this month for Latino Heritage Month, so people could really resonate with your story, because how many people have gone through very similar things that you've gone through?
Yeah.
A lot. You know, and
it's been a great journey.
It's been a great journey, and I love that.
Yeah, there's still more to go.
Yeah, you're still young. What are you talking about? We're expecting some more and more wines out of you for the next 40 to 50 years. What are you talking about?
Good.
That would be awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. I appreciate everything, and I'm looking forward to hopefully see you in your tasting group up in Napa.
Yeah, please. I invite you and your audience. We have a tasting room in St. Helena. It's walk-in if you'd like, but we do recommend appointments just so that we can be ready for you and that we don't have overlap. So we have an indoor and outdoor space. I have an amazing team that supports me in the tasting room, and you will be treated with royalty, and you'll get to taste some great wine. So come and visit us. We're right off of Main Street in St. Helena.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Michael. I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Enjoy the wine.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay.